That statement is compelling but highly inaccurate. UPS chose to walk away, and if there is a strike, it's going to be UPS striking themselves. So if they choose to do the right thing and concede to the demands, we'll be fine. But if they don't, that's a self-inflicted wound.
Last week, we told y'all that the Teamsters had set a July 5th deadline for a last best and final offer from UPS. And so since then, we learned that negotiations broke down on that day, on July the 5th, at about 4:15 a.m. after a 24-hour bargaining session, from what I can tell, which sounds terrible. I cannot imagine spending 24 hours across the table from corporate ghouls talking about how much my members deserve. That would just absolutely drive me crazy, but that's what they did. And so the Teamsters have said that UPS walked away from the bargaining table around 4 a.m. on Wednesday after the National Negotiating Committee unanimously rejected the company's latest substandard offer. The National Negotiating Committee has now left Washington, D.C., and local unions and members are ramping up practice picketing and ready-to-strike actions. The TDU says that the Teamsters for a Democratic Union, which is a reform caucus that backed the Teamsters United slate that put forward Sean O'Brien for president. The Teamsters for a Democratic Union said that the company did not put a last best and final offer on the table. There's still a path for the company to make a contract offer that Teamster negotiators can recommend to the membership, but that path is narrowing and time is running out. We are united as a union and ready to strike if that's what it takes to win, said Teamsters for a Democratic Union co-chair and shop steward Eugene Broswell. And, like we said last week, there have been several points, which is kind of baffling to me. There have been several points where the Teamsters have put down deadlines, and then the deadlines pass without really any ramifications for UPS or any penalties at all, as far as I can see. And, it looks like that's happened again, which, that in and of itself is, to me, not a good sign. But I do think it seems like it has been, it is over, there's more weight on the side that UPS Teamsters are prepared for a strike. We're seeing practice picketing all over the country. There's a lot of energy in the country and within the Teamsters Union for a strike if it is necessary. But it is disappointing to see this continuing, drawing lines and then backing up and allowing UPS to cross them and drawing a line. The first one that I can remember was that the Teamsters said that they will not negotiate on the national level until all of the supplements are resolved, meaning that the regional negotiating committees have agreed to send that supplement with the national when it goes to a vote. And that didn't happen until July the 3rd. They started negotiating the national contract back in January. So, that's huge. That's a huge difference in what they said they were going to do and then what actually happened. Additionally, they said that they set June the 30th as the deadline for a last best and final offer. And then they moved that to July the 5th as the deadline for a last best and final offer. And as you know, if you're listening to the show, presumably, we are now on the 8th of July and we still don't have a last best and final offer. And, so that's disappointing. And, they set this deadline, but they never explained what would happen if UPS didn't meet the deadline. But I think the obvious implication is that, okay, if you don't give us a last best and final offer by this day, then we're going to stop negotiating and we're going to strike. That's kind of that's kind of the way that I would have interpreted it. But that hasn't happened, and so they're still waiting for a last best and final offer, and they're saying that there's still a path to avoid a strike. And so we're going to see what happens going forward, but definitely some mixed stuff going on there as far as I can tell, in my opinion. But Sean O'Brien did make a media tour last week, and he did a very good job, I think, in a lot of these interviews. And so, you know, all that aside, he definitely, I would say, schooled, destroyed corporate media. And so let's take a look at this first one where CNN is kind of credulously repeating some of UPS's talking points, and let's see how Sean O'Brien reacts.
From UPS, they put out a statement. The Teamsters have stopped negotiating despite historic proposals that build on our industry-leading pay. Refusing to negotiate creates significant unease among employees and customers and threatens to disrupt the U.S. economy. You say to that what?
That statement is compelling but highly inaccurate. UPS chose to walk away, and if there is a strike, it's going to be UPS striking themselves.
Does this in some way hurt the
I'll stop there for just a
drivers
second.
and those?
Yeah, and that's, you know, that's a really important point to emphasize that. And we know, of course, that there's no reason for the Teamsters to walk away from the table if there's still movement happening. So there's absolutely no reason not to believe the Teamsters side of the story, that UPS is the one that walked away from the negotiating table. I think that even though they did sign an NDA saying that they're not going to, you know, discuss specifics, I think that the issues are pretty clear, and it is pretty clear kind of the ballpark that UPS needs to be in for the Teamsters to come to a tentative agreement on economics, which is the last remaining part of this contract. And so the idea that the Teamsters walked away from these negotiations, the idea that they would have done that while movement was still happening, is just really silly. So let's start back from there.
And if there is a strike, it's going to be UPS striking themselves.
Does this in some way hurt the drivers and those preloaders ultimately? We know after the last strike, there was a loss of some of the business that was not reclaimed. There are some experts and analysts in the field who say that maybe UPS will get 70% back of its business, but maybe not all of it. And of course, that would require potentially fewer preloaders, fewer drivers, and then that comes back to your Teamsters members.
Well, UPS, whatever they choose to do, if they choose to do the right thing and concede to the demands, will be fine. But if they don't, that's a self-inflicted wound that they're going to have to shoulder the burden of that. And look, like anything else, UPS has good times and bad times. This volume will come back. There'll be need to hire more people. So any negative impact on this is going to be self-inflicted by UPS.
And it won't impact your members?
It could, but it's going to be a short-term impact.
Yeah, so I really appreciated Sean O'Brien's responses there, and the framing there is absolutely completely right, and that he put forward, and it always is incredibly frustrating to me when the onus is always placed by the media onto workers. Right? You will not see on CNN or MSNBC, and certainly not Fox News, Carol Tomé in this seat saying, how bad are you not worried about the effect that this is going to have on consumers? Why don't you just give the Teamsters what they're asking for? Why are you willing to hurt your employees for all of this? Do you not think that you're asking for too much when you're wanting to make more profits than you have ever made in the history of your company? They made record-breaking profits in 2022. Why do you think it's okay, Carol Tomé, the CEO of UPS, to ask for even more than that in 2023? Why do you think that it's okay after a record-setting profit year, to ask for even more from your Teamster drivers? Because remember, we saw that their counterproposal leaked, the UPS counterproposal. They had, as one of their proposals, I mean, the idea of it is just, it's absurd, it's a joke, it's an insult. One of their counterproposals was to cut the top driver pay from $40 an hour to $30 an hour, a 25% pay cut for drivers at the top end of the scale, after they made more profits than ever in the history of the company. You know, that's the kind of stuff that they're putting out there, but they are not being asked, do you think you're asking for too much? So it's important to put that into perspective. Let's take a look at Bloomberg asking the same question. Are you worried about the damage this is going to do to the economy? Are you worried you're asking for too much? Let's listen to this on Bloomberg.
There is a deadline looming. If come August 1st there is a strike, is Teamsters not fearful of the potential economic repercussions of that? Couldn't that come back to hurt the very same workers that you were trying to get a better deal for?
Look, in 1997, UPS took the same position with the part-timers, and the Teamsters struck them nationwide.
For 15 days?
15 days. And look, like anything else, every time there's a situation like a strike, there's, short-term pain for a long-term gain. UPS is the best in the business. The customers pay for a service. Our Teamster members provide the best service. We know there's going to be a little bit of pain in the beginning, but UPS is good at recovering and recouping that volume, and we're confident. We have to take a stand now. We have to.
And taking a stand is the only way that the Teamsters have some of the best industry wages and best in the industry healthcare. It's because they have in the past went on strikes. And so the idea that going on strike in and of itself is going to be harmful for the very members that they're trying to protect is it's silly. That's what you have to do to maintain and to get more. But that's not what you're going to hear on some of this corporate media. And so one of the other talking points that UPS is really putting out there is that these workers make, the best in the industry pay. And so therefore, they deserve a pay cut, or they deserve, they don't deserve any more. We deserve all the increased profits. That's the argument that they're making. And so here is on CNN again, the host talking about just how much money package car drivers make.
You acknowledged in your Senate testimony that the starting salary for some of those drivers, $93,000 a year, at the top of the industry. So people who are at home hearing that UPS the workers might be going on strike, and they're already at the top of the heap starting for this, they question why. You tell those folks who are going to be inconvenienced what?
Well, look, I'll tell them this simply. UPS didn't give $93,000 a year out of the kindness of their heart. We've been fighting for decades and decades. We didn't get anything for UPS. We had to fight for it. UPS drivers and preloaders and all part-timers provide tremendous amount of service. UPS is making record profits, $100 billion. They doubled their profits. They need to take care of those people and stop worrying about Wall Street and focus on the people at Main Street.
That's exactly right, and that's a good message that the only reason they have that is because they've been willing to fight. It's not because UPS has been so generous, and we can see that from the fact that UPS is asking for pay cuts. Right now amid record-setting profit. And so the fact that, that the Teamsters had to fight is very important to emphasize, but it is also important to contextualize that 93,000 number. And he did that in his appearance on Bloomberg when they brought that up.
The full-timers, they make a great wage. UPS is out there telling people, well, they make $93,000 a year. But they're not telling you they have to work 60 or 65 hours a week to make that wage. So there's a lot of issues, but at the end of the day, we've got the majority of the negotiations have been completed. It's strictly down to economics. They know what we want. They know what we need.
So there you go. $93,000 a year would be a great wage if you only had to work a standard work week of 40 hours. But $93,000 a year to work 65, 60, 70 hours a week, that's like, I wouldn't do it. You'd have to pay me more than that to get me to work 70 hours a week. So it's just like, it's okay. It's okay for 60, 70 hours a week. $93,000 is okay. That's my view. So another thing that they're putting out there that is really, just seems to me to be just totally false is the rate of the part-time drivers. We just actually heard earlier in the program from a part-time driver who's been there for 13 years and makes $21 an hour. 13 years. $21 an hour, and UPS is telling Bloomberg that their full-time drivers are making $39 an hour and their part-timers are making $35 an hour. Let's hear how Sean O'Brien reacts to that.
Have collapsed, but this is important when we talk about wages. For example, a full-time employee at UPS makes about $39 an hour. A part-time employee makes about $5 less. What's also important is health and safety was coming up. This is going to be a common theme among labor conversations across the country, across industries. But working conditions like air conditioning and trucking, for example, or simply how many days you get off. But again, at the core of it comes, are these workers being paid in line with the profits that UPS is making?
Bloomberg's Kriti Gupta joining us from World Headquarters in New York. We thank you for the reporting, Kriti. Let's get more perspective now on the UPS negotiations from the union's perspective. Joining us here at the table, Sean O'Brien, General President of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. Sean, it's great to have you here. Thank you for joining us at what appears to be a critical moment. You tweeted, or the Teamsters tweeted at least, at about 4:30 in the morning on Wednesday. After marathon sessions, UPS negotiations collapsed. You're right, around 4 a.m., UPS walked away from the bargaining table after presenting an unacceptable offer to the Teamsters that did not address members' needs. UPS spoke with Bloomberg about this and says, "We have not walked away, and the union has a responsibility to remain at the table." When will you talk next?
Whenever they pick up the phone and call us. I mean, their story is compelling but highly inaccurate. We were talking about economics, and we did make a lot of progress on a lot of those issues that were talked about earlier. But when it came down to part-timers, I'll tell you what. If they're saying that part-timers make $5 less than $39 an hour, I'll sign that deal right now. That's not true. Our average part-timer is making starting wage rates about $16.50 per hour. You've got people living in poverty. Those are poverty wages. A lot of members in the big cities that work 2 or 3 jobs, especially the part-timers, are on subsidized housing, food stamps. So it's up to UPS to make this right, and they should tell the real story.
Okay, so you said you would sign a deal at $5 less per hour. Is that your bare minimum? What's the line here for
Well, if they were going to pay $35 an hour for a part-timer, I definitely would do that. That's what they're saying. That's not the truth. I mean, they do provide great benefits, but they provide them only because we mandate them. We've fought decades upon decades to negotiate superior conditions in these industries, and now it's time. I mean, look, think about the pandemic. You know, you see a UPS driver, the men and women that deliver in your neighborhoods, everybody loves them. But the unsung heroes are the ones that load those trucks, that went to work. And UPS had record profits, $100 billion.
Is that number that...
Yeah, absolutely. That's really important to understand when they're talking about these part-time rates. And so, you know, if UPS is going out there and saying our part-timers make $35 an hour, Sean O'Brien is calling the bluff and saying, okay, well, give us that contract and we'll sign it today. So that's where we're at right now with the with these Teamster negotiations, and that's some of the stuff that's at stake. So we're obviously going to be updating y'all every week. And next week, we're actually going to be talking to Teddy Ostro from the Upsurge podcast to kind of contextualize this situation. And in particular, we're going to get some history on the 1997 strike, learn what the issues were there and what Teamsters were able to win. So definitely check us out next week.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.